Giannotti, attorney at Butler Kahn. If you're like me, you may have followed this Murdaugh murder trial that's been going on, as well as the whole saga that has basically culminated in this murder trial, which is the subject of several documentaries as well as a podcast. So, if you're like me, I started with the podcast, and then there was an HBO documentary, now there's a Netflix documentary, now there's an actual live trial going on. I followed bits and pieces of the trial, but I thought the documentaries were very interesting. I feel if you followed it like me, you know this is just a tragic story in so many respects. I thought it would be a interesting way to talk about something that we see in our practice, which is how civil and criminal cases can work in tandem. So we often see this in sexual assault cases and in some car wreck cases. That is where the defendant commits a crime for which he or she is also sued for money damages. In the context of this Murdaugh saga, if you will, that if you followed it, you know that the murder trial, that is the accusation that Alex Murdaugh murdered his wife and son, you'll recognize that arises out of slightly different facts and circumstances than some of the other civil suits that we'll see here in a moment are outlined in this article behind me. But that is going to be, if I remember correctly, what kind of set things in motion, really, this horrible chain of events that culminated in the murders of the Murdaugh family was the equally tragic, horrific death of Mallory Beach, a young lady who was killed in a boat accident, a boating crash in the low country of South Carolina. There was drinking involved. And of course, being Murdaugh's, we see this in a common theme in this whole saga. There was a subsequent effort to cover up, and we saw that with in the documentaries as well as in the civil suit that both the Beach family as well as other passengers of the boat had brought various suits against the Murdaugh family, their estate, the other parties involved in that boating crash. But that is one of many horrific things that has happened in this whole saga of events. But that's another example, right, of something where there's both civil and criminal cases going on at the same time. So apparently the civil suits are still ongoing. I know at least one of them had been settled, and then Alex Murdaugh said he didn't have any money to pay it. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a moment. But there's also criminal charges, of course, against one of the Murdaugh sons who was driving the boat, and it was determined he was intoxicated. Basically, the cover-up effort just failed. But really disturbing stuff if you haven't watched that part of the documentary. It's quite interesting. But I'll go on here to the next of horrible things here is their housekeeper was also killed, she died apparently by allegedly falling down the stairs. She tripped and fell down the stairs and hit her head. But there was suspicion surrounding those circumstances of her death, and there was a wrongful death suit filed. And of course, the Murdaugh, Mr. Murdaugh, who's now on trial for murder, basically committed insurance fraud and also defrauded his own clients, the family of their longtime housekeeper, saying that he would, he negotiated a settlement without even telling them and then pocketed the money for himself. And yeah, that's basically, and they sued basically everybody involved, the bank, the insurance company, of course Murdaugh himself, a law firm, I believe, basically anybody that was complicit or arguably involved in this scheme to defraud the victim's family. That again is another example where you have a civil suit, and then there's actually, at least as of the date of this article, the criminal side is still under investigation. So we will see how that turns out. Other criminal actions by Murdaugh to defraud his clients, his law partners, have also resulted in civil suits. He's more more indictments and stealing money, so there's going to be civil suits to try to recoup the money, and then there's going to be obviously criminal charges. There are criminal charges, that is, against Murdaugh. He actually, in this trial this week, apparently admitted to stealing money for the first time. He previously denied it, but admitted to stealing the money, but said, no, I did not kill my wife and son. I did all this other bad stuff, but I didn't. So that was kind of a unexpected twist, if you will, in the murder trial. But anyway, this is another example here of the how criminal and civil cases can work in tandem, and that's with regard to Murdaugh's former law firm. He's now disbarred, of course, for doing all this horrible stuff. But apparently, he had it in a civil suit arising out of this embezzlement, extortion, fraud, all that. Arising out of that, on the civil suit, he took the fifth. Basically. He's invoked his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. He doesn't want to incriminate himself in the criminal case, so he took the fifth in the civil case. Now, key point here, the difference here is between civil and criminal cases is that while you do have that Fifth Amendment right in both cases, if a defendant takes the fifth in a civil case, the jury in the civil case may actually infer that the reason the defendant took the fifth was because the answer was going to incriminate him. A jury cannot do that. We call it an adverse inference in the law, but the jury is not allowed to infer that in a criminal case. The defendant's silence cannot be used against him. That's just the way criminal cases work. But in civil cases, again, the jury may be instructed on the adverse inference that they took the fifth because the answer was bad for them, right? I guess the last thing I'll say about this is apparently Murdaugh, he says he's very, very, very sorry and asks for everybody's forgiveness. He said I was on drugs. I admit to doing all those horrible things, but no, I still didn't kill my wife and son. I don't know what the jury's gonna decide, but if he is convicted of murder, I would imagine it would become even harder for folks to collect on a civil judgment against him individually. I know there are many pending lawsuits against him, and apparently already judgments entered against him, and he said, I don't have money, I'm broke, I can't pay this. I don't know whether that's true, but again, somebody who's convicted of murder and in prison, that's going to become even harder. So I wish the best for all the families and victims involved in this saga, and hope the justice is served in the end. But again, if this interests you, haven't watched the documentaries, they're great. Any questions about this stuff, feel free to comment below or send us a message. And thank you for watching.